Before I get started ranking the Metal Gear games, I just want to say a massive, heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you that has helped me achieve this incredible milestone. When I decided to start making Metal Gear content again earlier this year, my initial goal was to hit this milestone, 10K subscribers, by the very end of this year. I never in a million years thought that I would reach this milestone this quickly or even reach it at all. So thank you so very much to every single one of you that has decided to stick around and subscribe. Whether you're enjoying my shorts or my longer form videos, I really do appreciate you guys liking, commenting, and obviously subscribing. It means a ton. It helps the channel out a ton. And now that we've reached this milestone, I have a ton of new goals and a ton of new content that I want to tackle for you guys. So thank you so much for believing in the journey, and I hope you guys enjoy my ranking of the Metal Gear games. All right, here we are. This is something that I've been asked to do so many times over the years, whether it's on Twitter when the tier maker stuff starts trending and making its way over to the Metal Gear community, or on Twitch. I've been asked many times what my ranking of the Metal Gear games are, where each game ends up when pinned up against one another, all that fun stuff. So I think I have messed around with tier maker before in regard to Metal Gear, but I haven't found a list as thorough as this one, and it's actually funny. I didn't notice, I just noticed actually while I'm preparing for this video that this list was made by Nitroid, because of course it is. The most complete tier list has to be made by Nitroid, right? If you don't know Nitroid, he is basically a walking encyclopedia for Metal Gear and Metal Gear knowledge. He's also one of the hosts of the Kojima Frequency podcast. So if you don't follow Nitroid, make sure you give him a follow. Make sure you give his podcast a listen. It's good stuff. I'm going to be going through each game quickly, explaining why it's ending up in the tier that it is, how I feel about the game, and also one thing to keep in mind is, let's just throw up the first two games, right? So let's say I put Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake in a tier. If I put Metal Gear 2 in front of Metal Gear 1, that is saying that I feel like it is a better game. So just another way to differentiate between tiers. Just keep that in mind. So Metal Gear 1 for the NES, not going to spend too much time on it because it is not my favorite game. Metal Gear 1 in general isn't my favorite game. I think it's an okay game and I respect it for, basically kickstarting the series. But this being the inferior version of a game that I already don't necessarily love, it's got to end up in the D tier, right? Now, moving on to Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. This is a super underrated, underappreciated game. If you actually play this game, you can quickly point out at least 100 different things that this game did first that then became series staples and things that are fan favorites later on in the series. It is a game that often people overlook because I think it came out in the 1990s, so it's kind of antiquated. The mechanics are a little antiquated. It's a bit nebulous compared to games nowadays, but the art style is amazing. The stealth mechanics, for it being such an old game, are amazing. The music is amazing, some of the best in the series. The characters that you meet, amazing. Just everything about the game, the plot, the settings, the sprites, the artwork, like I said, is just amazing, and it's a super underrated game. I'm gonna put it in the B tier for now. Moving on now to Metal Gear Acid. Why is Metal Gear Acid 2 in front of Metal Gear Acid 1? Let's do Metal Gear Acid 1 first. This is a game that I personally have a soft spot for. I remember getting my PSP around the time that it launched, not on launch day, but I remember getting it for, I think, my birthday of that year. And this was the game that I got with it, I believe, or maybe it was a game that I got very close to when I first got my PSP, and that's why I have such an attachment to it. It's a pretty solid game, no pun intended. You know, it puts a fun little twist on the typical Metal Gear formula. It kind of threw us all for a loop and made a strategic, tactical, card deck, turn-based game. I don't really know what to classify it as, but I think this game, I've said it over the years many times, I think this game would do a lot better nowadays, now that people are accustomed to playing a bit more bite-sized games, whether it's on their mobile phone, on the Switch, some indie games, you know, on whatever console you prefer to play. This fits kind of into that little indie card builder, roguelite, TCG type game. For now, I'm going to place it in the C tier, which kind of breaks my heart. Not that C tier is bad, but I personally have a soft spot for Acid, but I do recognize that it is not the best Metal Gear game or even the best spin-off by a mile. Moving on now to Acid 2. It does everything Acid did in a much better way. Really like the more defined art style, more unique art style, whereas Metal Gear Acid 1 tried to be more like Metal Gear Solid 2, like look more like Metal Gear Solid 2. Acid kind of did its own thing with like the more, I think it's called cel-shaded art style, right? The music's really good. The story's a bit better than Acid 1. The characters are really cool. The plot's a little less nonsensical than Acid 1. So I do like this game much better than Acid, the first Acid, but it still suffers from some of the same flaws The most notable to me, the most notable flaw to me in both of these games is that there's not the addition of a deck save slot system. So each time you want to change your deck out entirely, you have to go into the deck builder in each of these games and take out each and every single card yourself manually to switch out your deck loadout, if that makes sense. So it kind of still suffers from not having certain quality of life features over the prequel to it. For that reason, I am going to also place it in the C tier in front of Acid. Moving on now to Metal Gear Arcade. All right, Nitro, you're definitely trolling, dude. There's no way no one's played this unless you live in Japan and went to arcades actively during, like, I'd say, like, what was it, like 08 to like 2010 or something, whenever it was. You haven't played this game. Don't lie to me. I've seen footage of it. I've seen people play it, recorded on like a phone camera or like maybe even like an actual camera back in the day, because this game's so old now. And I also saw recently that you can play it with, what do they call, like a VR headset, which is actually really cool. That is the first thing I would do if I owned a VR headset, but no one's played this game. I haven't played this game, and I am probably one of the world's biggest Metal Gear Online 2 fans, so I'm gonna put this in never played. It's funny that this is included though. So now moving on to Metal Gear for the Game Boy Color, or Metal Gear Ghost Babel. Very similar to Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. This is an underrated game. The music, amazing. The art style, amazing. The actual gameplay, moment-to-moment gameplay is amazing. This game is incredibly underrated. It is a game that you need to either go out and buy if you still have a Game Boy or a means to play Game Boy games, or emulate this. Whatever you need to do, you absolutely need to play Metal Gear for the Game Boy Color. It is really good. If you have not played this game, you are missing out. Trust me, it is amazing, and that's why it gets placed in the A tier right up here. Moving on now to Metal Gear Online 2, which is, if you know anything about me, this game means so much to me. I spent countless hours playing this game. I burned out, I've told the story many times, but I burned out a plasma screen TV back in the day when those were all the rage. Like, when you would turn off the TV, you could see the Metal Gear, like, or the MGO2 HUD. You could see like your health bar, the round timer, and like the ticket counter burned into the screen. I played this game so much. I played this game obsessively. I would skip school to play this game. I obsessed over this game. It was everything to me. If you have not played Metal Gear Online 2, because it's shut down, or you got into the series after servers were officially shut down, you have to try to get into savemgo.com. There's two different ways you can play it. If you have a PS3, you can hook in that way. You don't even have to use or custom firmware on your PS3. Or if you have a pretty nice PC with a really good CPU, you can also play it on your PC. I go back to this game all the time. It's safe to say, the way that I'm speaking about it, would you ever think that I'm going to put it anywhere else other than the S tier? This is Metal Gear spin-off perfection. One of my top things that I want Konami to do is either re-release this game, remaster it, or make a better version of it. This game is amazing. It's phenomenal. Like I said, if you have any means to play on these unofficial servers, please look it up. I might do a video on this actually, on how to connect to those servers. All right, so the next game is Metal Gear Online 3, and this game unfortunately was kind of doomed from the start. From what I've heard from people who worked there that I'm still friends with, this game had a very tumultuous development cycle from the beginning, from its inception, but it never quite caught on. It never caught momentum, and then Konami kind of just stopped supporting it. I like this game. I spent a lot of time on this game. I met a lot of friends that I still talk to now, years later, on this game. Unfortunately, it doesn't reach that same caliber as Metal Gear Online 2, and I stopped playing it shortly after I noticed that Konami stopped supporting it. So because of that, I'm going to have to place it in the C tier, in between Metal Gear Acid 2 and Metal Gear Acid 1. Just didn't quite capture the same Metal Gear Online magic as the second game and even the first game, which is the next game, and that's Metal Gear Online 1. It is the beginning of the Metal Gear Online spin-off series. I played a little bit of this game. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that I played it obsessively like Metal Gear Online 2, but I did experience it when it was still going, and I really enjoyed my time with it. So I wasn't really like hooked on it. I thought it was cool that you could play Metal Gear with other people online, and I was obsessed with Snake Eater, so more Snake Eater was always a good thing to me, but it didn't quite have that, like, what MGO2 had, but it was a cool game, and it provided the skeleton of what MGO would become in MGO2, so I do respect it. I'm going to place it in the B tier. Moving on now to Metal Gear for the MSX, the game that started it all. I've played through this game a handful of times. I do respect it for what it did, for popularizing the stealth genre, for kind of going against the grain that was the shoot 'em ups back then. Instead of fighting and shooting and killing everything, you actively wanted to avoid being spotted and being caught, so you didn't have to go into those gunfights and start murdering everything in your sight. So for that reason, I like I said, I truly respect the game, and this is the actual version of it, unlike the NES version that we rated earlier. I'm gonna put this in the C tier. Moving on to Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I remember people shitting on it because of Raiden. I remember people shitting on it because it wasn't Metal Gear Solid Rising, the original version, Hideo's original version for the Metal Gear Solid Rising game. I remember people shitting on it because it didn't have that much to do with like stealth and stealth mechanics. It was much more of an action combat game, obviously because it was developed by, or partially developed by Platinum Games. I remember people just absolutely slamming this game. I never had a problem with it. More Metal Gear for me. I think it's a great game. I think it's one of my favorite action games of all time. Super fluid combat, super fun boss battles. You all know the legendary music. I don't even need to speak on that. If you haven't played Metal Gear Rising, definitely play it. It is one of the better spin-offs in the series. And for that reason, I am putting it in the B tier. And on to, what the hell is that? Oh, that's the graphic novel, right? It's all right. I really like the art style. I think they did a good job overall retelling the story of Metal Gear Solid 1. I just don't really understand like who this is for, if that makes sense. If I'm gonna experience the story of Metal Gear Solid 1, I'm just gonna replay it, you know what I mean? There's no real reason for me to like want to watch like a digital graphic novel. So for that reason, I'll put it in the D tier. Not that it's bad, it's just not something that I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait to watch the digital graphic novel of Metal Gear Solid 1. Moving on now to, what is this? Metal Gear Solid, is this Integral? I think that is Integral. By the way, I should mention the PC version of Integral that you can buy on GOG.com is not actually Integral. I don't know why they named it that, but it's basically Integral Lite. Not everything that's included in the original version of Metal Gear Solid Integral is found on the PC version. So if you're like, why haven't you played the PC version? That's Integral. It's really not. This actual version of Integral is a really good game. I mean, it's just more Metal Gear Solid 1. So I feel like I should just be talking about Metal Gear Solid 1 in general. And yes, I'm placing it behind MGO 2. I don't care what you guys say. Going back to MGS 1 now, though, I mean, what can I say? It's the legendary game that most of us, like the introduction for most of us, was this game. Long story short, I absolutely love this game. It will always be S tier for me. It will always be the starting point for me for falling in love with this series. I respect the hell out of it. I think it still holds up to this day, and I can't wait for a lot of you to experience it for the first time in the Master Collection. Moving on now to, I'm guessing this is the digital graphic novel for MGS2. Same thing, I'm going to put it in the same tier as the first graphic novel. But if I want to re-experience Metal Gear Solid 2, I'm going to boot up Metal Gear Solid 2 on the plethora of systems that I have it on. Like, re-experience it by playing it myself. It's never something that I like, oh man, like I said, I can't wait to watch the digital graphic novels for MGS 1 and 2. So moving on now to MGS 2 has really climbed the ranks in as far as what my favorite Metal Gear can be and is in this present moment. This is why this question is always so hard for me when people ask me what my favorite Metal Gear is, because I'm the type of person that's always changing how I view things and trying to learn new things and trying to garner new knowledge. I appreciate different things now because of, you just get older and you get wiser and you live a little more. And because of those reasons, MGS2 has risen up to probably be my favorite Metal Gear game right now. If you were to ask me right now, I can't promise it'll be the same in 5 years if I make this video again in 5 years. I've always loved this game. I've always appreciated what it did in context with having played Metal Gear 1 and then going to Metal Gear Solid 2. This being one of the best sequels to one of the best games, one of the most legendary games in Metal Gear Solid 1 of all time. But for some reason in this year, in 2023, I've grown to love this game more than some of the games that I thought would be solidified as my favorite games of all time in the series. So moving on now to Metal Gear Solid 3D. The reason I laugh is because not that this is a bad game by any means. I'm placing it in the D tier while saying that, but from what I do remember, it is kind of hard to get through this game. It's very commonly referred to as a slideshow, and I would have to agree with that for the most part. I remember fighting the Fury on this specifically, and it being even worse than the Fury fight in the original versions of MGS3, just because of like the frame rate caused by the fire was like probably in the single digits, I'm not gonna lie. So unfortunately, because of that, I'm placing it in the D tier. Still placing it in front of the graphic novels and Metal Gear for the NES though, so that's something going for it. Moving on now to the original versions of MGS3. I'm gonna place these up here. If you were to ask me 5 years ago where MGS3 would be, I would definitely have said in front of MGS2. But as I've said, this year specifically, for some reason, I have grown infatuated with MGS2, and that's why MGS3 is snuggled here in between MGS2 and MGS1. I love MGS3. This was my favorite game for the longest time. I love speedrunning it. I love all the mechanics. I love all the bosses. I love the very easy to understand story. This is the game that you give Metal Gear beginners if they don't want to suffer through MGS1 because of the controls or whatever. You give them MGS3 and you tell them to play through it. And more often than not, people fall in love with the series because of this game. Just solidified my love for the franchise even more. Will always have a special place in my heart for Metal Gear Solid 3. Moving on now to one of the most controversial games in the series, which is MGS4. When I first bought this game, you have that honeymoon phase where, you know, you're like, holy shit, this is the best Metal Gear ever. Can't get any better than this, right? And then I sort of replayed it and I started seeing some of the flaws. And eventually I started like flat out disliking the game because it kind of undid a lot of the mystique that the series had. Too much of something kind of ruins it, in my opinion. That's just how I see it. So like when you overly explain every single little detail and every single little era and every single little thing that happened in between this year and this year, and what all the characters were doing and every single motivation that they had, and you know what I mean, like, and just explaining every single like plot line, it kind of loses some mystique. But I've then, you know, kind of come full circle and I'm starting to enjoy it much more now. I replayed it recently during my most recent series replay earlier this year, and it's grown on me a little bit, and I kind of understand now, coming from Hideo's point of view, how he felt making this game, how he felt continuing this series. Seeing it from that point of view and seeing what he was trying to do, it has grown on me a little bit. So I am going to place it in the A tier behind Ghost Rebel. It's still not my favorite game. I don't think it reaches legendary status like the original trilogy does, but I do have to give it some props for also including MGO2 in it, at least in the West. So that's another reason why it gets placed in the A tier for my rankings. Next up is Metal Gear Solid Mobile. All right, dude. Who played this? No one's played this. Let me just quickly put that in the never played. On to Peace Walker. Now, Peace Walker is up there for me. It is immediately going into the S rank. So a lot of you, if you've watched my videos, especially recently, you've known that I absolutely love this game. Peace Walker is the game that I play on the PSP, or I play on an emulator, or I play on the HD collection when I want to just chill, when I want to just relax, when I still want to play Metal Gear, but I don't want to like overthink it, or like, you know, I play a couple missions and then I put it down and then I pick it back up 2 days later and play another few missions. I absolutely love Peace Walker. It has this certain charm. It has this sort of like lighthearted for a lot of it. I like the variety of the missions. Like I said, I like that they're bite-sized and I can pick it up and put it down, which I think was the intention. I think it was a really good evolution of what Portable Ops started. So yeah, Peace Walker, absolutely love it. One of my favorite games. Definitely solidifies its place in the S tier ranking. This is, what is this? Is this Metal Gear Solid Touch? All right, well, I'm gonna put this in the very front of the B tier here. I did play this game, and I know it gets a lot of shit. It was just a little shooting gallery, silly game. I remember distinctly playing this game in one of my best friend's classes when I would ditch my class to go to his class. I remember specifically playing this game while the teacher or the substitute was trying to teach us. It does have a special place in my heart for that because those memories are very distinct to me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And trust me going to high school did not happen yesterday. So for that reason, it is going in the D tier. Next up is Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. I'm going to put it in the B tier behind Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. I actually really recently, like as of I think a month and a half ago or so, 2 months ago, went back and replayed Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes for one of the videos that I was making. And I played through it twice, once on just normal difficulty to go through the story. I actually enjoyed my time with it. Whereas before I would have probably put this game in the lower C or even high D category. It's actually risen up to the B tier for me because it isn't as bad as people say. It's just a different way, very similar to the digital graphic novels, to experience Metal Gear Solid 1's story. If you've played through MGS1 countless times like I have, and you want to go back and re-experience it a different way, why not play the Twin Snakes? It's really not that bad. I promise you guys, if you go into it with an open mind, you will enjoy your time with it. Next up, we have probably the most hated Metal Gear game of all time, which is Metal Gear Survive. And I think a lot of you are going to be very surprised where I put this. And that's going to be in the C category. I think some stuff got shifted around, right? Either way, whatever. Metal Gear Survive, top of the C tier. I'm not gonna lie to you guys and try to be a contrarian and controversial and say that this is my favorite Metal Gear game and it's an amazing game and you all have to run out and buy it right now and everybody who said it's bad is stupid or uninformed. But I do think this game gets a lot of unwarranted hate. It's not an amazing game, I'm not gonna lie to you. The story isn't amazing. The gameplay isn't amazing. The characters are not amazing, but it's also not the worst game ever made of all time. And it's probably not even the worst Metal Gear game, to be honest with you. I had a lot of fun playing this game online co-op with 3 other friends. I did enjoy my time with it. Like I said, the story was whatever. I don't even really remember most of the story beats, but I do have really fond memories of playing with my good friends that I met through MGS5, The Phantom Pain, and MGO3. And then we hopped on this when it came out and played through it, got through all the content. So yeah, good times. Not the worst game of all time, but also not the best, which is why it is in the C tier. Next up is Ground Zeroes. This one is definitely going to get placed in the A tier. Ground Zeroes was an amazing little bite-sized collection of missions. Came out at a time where we were all super excited, super hyped up for the Phantom Pain. Played the hell out of this mission. I was #1 on the leaderboards for the hard difficulty speed run for this game for the longest time. I remember me and like Bonabodu, who was he was actually like an MGS4 speedrunner, and he was competing with me in MGS5. His friend Azerty, we were all competing. I remember waking up and checking the leaderboards every single day, like immediately, like, oh, did that son of a bitch Bonabodu or Azerty pass me up on the leaderboards? And I have really fond memories of trying to reclaim my top spot and just finding different interesting ways of completing this game. It was a really fun experience. It doesn't quite live up to that, legendary status for me, that S rank tier for me, but it is still a good experience, and it is, very important to the overall Metal Gear story. That is why it's placed in the A tier for me specifically. Next up is VR missions, and I played a lot of VR missions back in the day. VR missions are a great way to kind of, I guess, get better at the games and really learn all the fundamentals and become really acquainted with them. So then you can go back and try to speedrun the game. So then you can go back and try to get your Big Boss emblem or your Foxhound emblem or your Foxhound rank and all that good stuff, right? So I will always have a special place for VR missions. I still have my original copy with me as part of my collection. And yeah, it was a good time. VR missions gets placed in the B tier for me personally. Now here is another game that is kind of controversial. I am placing it in the S tier. I was so hyped up. I don't think I've ever been as hyped for a game as I was for the Phantom Pain, and I've seen a lot of people echo that same sentiment. This game, the hype for this game was incredible, was monumentous. Like I said, I don't think I'm ever gonna feel that way about a game again. And then when the game came out, I distinctly remember the feeling like playing that game and just not even playing it, just like loading up the loading screen, and you know how it's the hospital room with the fan oscillating and like the pedals falling down and stuff. And I just had to sit there for a second before I decided to like start the game and like really collect myself that I was actually playing the Phantom Pain, the game that I was obsessing over, that I wanted to play since it got announced as like Project Ogre, since they teased it as the Phantom Pain and that whole fake out of Moby Dick Studios that Kojima did. I almost couldn't believe that I was actually playing the game. And then I played through it, and it was basically Peace Walker HD is the best way I could describe it at the time, right? I felt like it was everything I loved about Peace Walker just made better, or just made with better graphics. The story is hit or miss for a lot of people. I like it. I appreciate what Hideo was trying to do. I appreciate the message that he was trying to convey. You will not find any Phantom Pain hate coming from me. I absolutely love this game. I absolutely love what Kojima did as his kind of like last hurrah through Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. So for that reason, I place it behind Peace Walker at the very tail end of the S rank. Next up is Portable Ops Plus? So admittedly, I didn't play Portable Ops Plus that much. I did play it a little bit, so I do credit it with a lot of kind of like stuff that they took and then ran with it to make MGO2. There's certain stages that debuted in Portable Ops and Portable Ops Plus that they then remade for MGO2 and have been staples in Metal Gear Online since then. So I do appreciate what Portable Ops Plus did, but I would be lying if I said I played it a ton. I don't think it's a bad game. I'm going to place it in the B tier, as well as Portable Ops. We'll get into Portable Ops now. The problems that I have with it are the controls. You can tell they hadn't really wrapped their minds around making a Metal Gear for the PSP yet, and so the controls are kind of wonky. The story is okay. I don't like what they did to some of my favorite characters. and I don't really want to make this very spoilery, but I don't really love this game, but I did love it at the time that it released, if that makes sense. Again, harping back on that fact that you do see things differently for better or worse as you get older, right? I love this game when it came out because it was more MGS3, and like I said, I was obsessed with MGS3 and obsessed with Big Boss and obsessed with that whole story and his storyline and his progression to end up becoming the Big Boss that becomes. At the time, I really loved it. Now it's kind of like this thing where, like, sometimes if I'm in a certain mood, I'll go back and replay it during my series replays. But for the most part, I do end up, unfortunately, a lot of you guys are going to be disappointed, but I do end up skipping this game myself. So moving on now to, is this, no way this man included social ops, right? Is this Metal Gear Solid social ops? All right, well, let me just say this. You can go to my channel right now and see that I'm one of the very few people that actually has Metal Gear social ops footage. But having said that, do I know what the hell this game is about or what I was doing while I was capturing that footage? Absolutely not. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm going to place this at the front of the never played list, even though I have played it. Again, I did play this. I was so obsessed with Metal Gear when I first started making Metal Gear content that I made a Japanese Apple ID, and then I spoofed my IP address to make it seem like I was in Japan, so I was able to download Metal Gear Solid Social Ops and play through it, right? But I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just wanted to get footage out there. The sneaking around and stuff, man, I was just pressing buttons, dude. I don't speak Japanese. I don't understand any Japanese. I can't read Japanese, so I was just playing. I was just clicking buttons, and somehow it worked. So Snake's Revenge. A lot of you guys probably think I'm gonna put this in the D tier, but I'm actually gonna place it here behind Acid. You can definitely tell that they absolutely did not understand what he was trying to do with Metal Gear 1, and that's why they went and made this. And this is much more akin to one of those typical shooters that I mentioned early on. There's still little stealth mechanics sprinkled in here and there, but if you like stuff like Contra or you like shmups or shoot 'em ups, you might actually enjoy Snake's Revenge. What is this? Is this Roblox? Did this man sneak a custom Roblox game in here? Ganbale. Hold on, let me look this up real quick. This man trolling us? Was a downloadable cell phone game. It was a crossover between Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots and Ganbar Salaryman that was available through Sony Ericsson's download service Play Now. Cell phone game about a middle-aged salary worker was modded to feature characters from Metal Gear Solid 4 in a collaboration between Konami and Sony Ericsson. All right, so it is basically a Roblox game. It's just Hideo's version of one. Safe to say, I've never even heard of this, so never played. Oh man, Nitroid's trolling now. The Patchy slot, dude. Well, haven't played that either. And this looks like a Burger King Sonic ring toy that you got back in the 90s, but I think it's the Tiger's Electronics. If you guys ever played those, you guys were 80s or 90s kids, you guys remember Tiger Electronics. I've never played this version of it, but I had the Toy Story one, and that shit was pretty lit. So safe to say I haven't played the last 3 games on this list, but that is the final tier list for me personally, you guys. I know this was a long video, but it was my thank you for you guys helping me achieve 10K subscribers on YouTube. Thank you guys so much once again for helping me reach that incredible milestone. It means more than you can ever imagine. And I promise you guys, this is just the very absolute, very beginning for me for what I have planned and what I want to achieve. Thank you guys so much for all you've helped me achieve thus far. And I will see you guys in the next one.